Yes.
Well, there's never an overload because they don't have the ferries at the capacity that can get on them.
Okay, they're not close to overload.
I think that it doesn't mean there's no
Say,
overload.
choose 48 cars. We don't exceed that.
And these are averages, right?
These are averages, so if the average is 70, that it may overload, 130 times and not overload 40 times, and it averages at 70.
It doesn't give that, Laura. That's not saying that at all. It's giving absolute numbers for days of the week, for months of the year.
Oh, that it overloads? Oh, I didn't
There's
see
no
those.
There's no overload.
I find that, I was on one just in the last month where I came around the corner and went, I'm not getting on.
I know,
Our daughter
did too.
It is average vehicles carried, so absolute numbers.
Oh,
It's gonna happen from time to time, but is it a real issue or is it a?
My husband works in the ferry, so I
Let's
think.
finish the round.
Yeah, let's go down.
Let's hear the main points each person has, and then we can discuss them.
So I think it's more a perception problem than a real problem. We had somebody check the ferry for about a week and a half. There was never an overload during that time except the day after the long weekend. And we all know that the silly season is coming, and all bets are off in terms of when we wait and when we don't wait. And it applies equally to us as it does to Hornby, because a lot of those people are coming with their trailers or campers or whatever, and they're taking up a lot of space on the ferry. So we don't get on. Sometime we're sitting at the top of the hill and we're waiting just like everybody else. The other thing I wanted to say is that I did send something out the other day, and I thought, here's a way if there's a person with a real problem that has a medical or another kind of appointment that's really critical, let's help them get on. Two people said it was not a very good idea, and for various reasons. And there was never ever any implication in what I said that was meant to say that it was a problem that Hornby could solve by itself. My comment there was meant to say that it's a problem that originates on Hornby, can be solved on Hornby, but I do understand and know that we on Denman have to be part of accepting that solution and understanding how it's going to work. And we can't make it work if there's a will to, but I don't think the will is there. So the last thing I want to say is that when we talked about this at our last residents meeting, and somebody said, well, if it's a real problem, tell them to come over and they can stay the night and then we'll get them on the ferry. And that's the bottom line.
Come stay on Denman overnight. When I go kind of there, so it doesn't happen.
Let's stick to the... Okay. Let's not have a discussion.
Okay.
Let's not do the main points everybody's got, and we've got all the main points on the table, we can discuss them.
Okay, I've talked to a lot of people, and what I see is, if it's a designated lane, which has just whoever shows up, RVs, just so they came from Hornby, the first X number that managed to make it, I can't imagine who would police this and who would take care of that. If it's a reservation lane of some kind that is designated by through the doctor's pink slips or whatever, then I still don't know who's going to administer it. Like the staff would have to be trained to vet the people as they come, or perhaps Hornby could, as they get on Hornby and they're all the first 5 cars because they need to go, the staff there can decide if indeed they think this is their job. If he could call the captain and say, I got 6 medical certificates this morning that are having surgery at 9:30. They need to get on board, and then that would be accommodated by the Denman ferry. But to have it just be a lane that fills up with the first 10 people, 5 people, 20 people, that leaves it also open to abuse, because occasional users use our ferry too. They are not easy to get out of that lane, you know. There's been arguments, you know, people come down and they think they can get in line, and there's, 60 cars up the hill. They're occasional users. They can't be expected to have the same compassion we do. So I can't see how it would be administered or policed. And if we're gonna try to give this job to the ferry crew, that's really, they don't do that now. I can't see why they would want to do it in the future. And perhaps that could be adopted and they could be trained to look at a private medical certificate, or the captain could be and give them a blank card with none of their personal details, but to give them a space. But there's privacy issues involved in that. So the people I talked to said medical purposes, if there are valid medical purposes, they have a pig slip from the doctor, or even if it doesn't qualify as a travel pig, then they can still go to the doctor and get a permission from mommy, you know. So that's two methods.
Yeah, I think you commiserate with those people, but it's a matter of how the hell you implement that. You got 20 cars coming off Hornby, one got a pink slip. How does that person get in? You know, they may say, okay, we'll reserve the past, we'll load up and leave 5 spots for the medical emergencies in Hornby. Well, how do they know which ones it's going to be? It's an implementation problem.
I agree.
And I think based on these data that have been distributed, for the most part, it's a perceived problem. It's going to happen once in a while, and just like we all get inconvenienced once in a while by the 8,000 people that go over to Hornby every weekend or something like that. So I don't see how it can be practically implemented.
Tony, you going to speak to it?
Not just now.
Yeah, you made some good points that I need to speak to, because I think maybe this isn't being framed the correct way. First of all, there's always a reluctance on the part of any group to relinquish any level of advantage or privilege they have, whether it's the right thing to do or not. That's always the case. And I don't think we as a committee have to worry too much about the segment of our respective communities that may not like things that are the right thing to do simply because they feel, and again it's mainly a matter of perception anyway, that they may be losing some of their privileges or advantages. But the truth of the matter is, there is no reason why Hornby travelers shouldn't have access to half-deck space on the Quinitza. None. I haven't heard any logical reason. I've heard emotional reasons, but there is no logical reason. The ferry is there to service both communities, not just Denman. And the fact is that Hornby people need to have some assurance that if they have a critical appointment, and it's not just medical, it can be catching a plane, it can be getting to a funeral, it can be a whole range of things. They need to have some assurance that they're going to be able to make that early morning ferry. Now, the overloads don't happen often, but we have no control over when those family emergencies happen to people. And whenever they happen, they need to know that they're going to be able to, that if they get down to shingle spit on Hornby as early as possible, they need to know that they're going to be able to get through to Vancouver Island on the 8 o'clock sailing from Denman West. See, I can't think of any argument that's based on any level of fairness that competes with that thought. I haven't heard one so far. So when it comes to the matter of how to police this or administer it, that's not our business. I think we as a committee have to say, I mean, it's nice to think of the viability of something when we're proposing something or taking a stand, but it's not our business to resolve that issue. That's BC Ferry's issue. We as a committee, I think, have to decide what the right thing to do is, present that to BC Ferries as a recommendation, then they have to work out how they're going to accomplish that. And we know already that whatever system they put in place, it's not going to work perfectly. There will always be some people who abuse anything, whether it's unemployment insurance or the medical system or anything, but we don't have to have a perfect system before we support it if it's the right thing to do. And that's what it all comes back to for me. It's the right thing to do. So why wouldn't we support it?
Okay. I also think it's the right thing to do. I agree that we share the ferries, and I think sharing is complicated and worthwhile. And I think it does come down to doesn't come down to comparing who has more inconvenience because of the other group and all of that. I don't think that we can really get into that and try and make some big picture where we weigh out how annoying it is that we're stuck behind trailers with how annoying it is that there's traffic and the Hornby people having to wait. Like, we can't put everything on a scale and try and make complete justice, but I think in this case we do need to look at, for me, the basic principle is on Denman, if it's something really important, we have the option of sucking it up and getting super early to the ferry terminal, and with our kids in our arms and our coffees and waiting there, and we know we'll get on. And for that particular sailing, and it's the only one, other than the ones that Hornby has no access to, Hornby doesn't have that, and it's such an important sailing. And I think that we should provide some level of that, and I just think it's the right thing to do. And it may be unpopular on Denman to say that, and it's an election year and everything, but I believe it. People talk about the medical emergencies, but I have family and friends on Hornby, so maybe I see it differently, and I know what their life is like. And I also know what would happen if someone said to me, that people say all the time, well, you could just stay on the other side then. Your kid has an early morning hockey practice, and just stay on the other side. Are you kidding? Like, I have to pack up stuff for me, for my kid. I have to find someone to walk my dog and to water my plants. I have to rearrange this. I have to have someone to pick up the other kid. Like, it's not like, oh, they can just stay on Denman. Like, we all know that living in ferry dependent communities is complicated. So anyway, I'll get to the point. I think that it's not just medical emergencies. It could be, and I've known this, it could be travel plans, it could be court dates, it could be your kid, it has a special educational designation and needs to get to a program once a week in Courtney, and it's going to be late anyways because it starts at 8:30, but at least they won't be very late, and they're stressed about going on. Like, these things really happen regularly. It could be a really important work or business appointment. There are many things, and there's no option for Hornby Islanders other than coming and staying on Denman or staying in Courtney, which is not always feasible, And so I think it's the right thing to do. I think it happens very rarely, and I'm really glad to hear that. So my question is, when it does happen on those rare moments, do we share that inconvenience with Hornby, or do we say, well, the few times it happens, the Hornby people are going to be stuck, so they can never feel they rely on it, or that we share that inconvenience equally? And I think we should. I think that implementation is primarily BC Ferry's job, but I do think that we have a role to play, because when they don't implement something well, we should have input into that, and we do. We're going to talk about the shuttling sign because they did implement it well. So I think we should be interested in implementation. I'd like to hear from them what to do. I think that we should provide some way of doing this. I don't think it should be 25. I actually don't think that's fair, because 25 Denman Islanders are not assured of a space on that ferry, and that just seems way too much also just for public perception. I'd go more with like 10. And I don't think that we can work with a system where it's being evaluated. How important is it? Is it your kid? Is it you? Are you going in to support a person who's having an operation, but it's not in their family? Like, how can we judge that? Whose job would that be? That sounds kind of crazy. I think it's got to be the first, let's say, 10 cars, and we live with the fact that some of them won't, quote unquote, deserve it, or won't. It's not about deserving, sorry, but you know what I mean. Some of them may not be the ones this is targeted at. If you do have to go early for it, it's going to weed out a lot of people, and it will provide that option. I don't think 10 or 12 is too many, and it would happen so rarely that we would hardly notice it. I'm finished, thank you.
Well, I am taking an incredibly opposite tact on that. For one thing, I don't see it as an emergency at all, because these things are things that people plan for the night before. The historical perspective is that we have had a ferry system with the 8 o'clock ferry forever as being the first Hornby ferry, and so somehow we've survived for at least my 32 years on the island. So I don't see it as emergencies at all. It's something you plan for. When I had an operation at St. Joseph's, we went in the night before. I stayed in town. right? So it's things you know are coming up, you know you really want to catch that ferry, right? So you've got to do something about it. That's called a personal responsibility. Moral suasion about fairness in the world. That's good. I'm not guaranteed anything on the big ferries going down there. Luckily, because the ferries are so poorly run these years, that there's lots of space for me on the ferries, usually in Victoria. To have any idea that someone's going to police this on our side, we are going to a cable ferry with perhaps 3 or 4 crewmen. There's not going to be no policing down there whatsoever. I find it divisive. I think this idea coming up is just saying, you're from Hornby, you're from Denman. I think it's terribly divisive. I don't like it at all. I think we have a precedent, a whole history of it. I don't think it's for hockey players. I don't think it's for anything trivial. You've got a big problem, you think ahead. You do something about it, right? I'm flying out of Vancouver, and I know I've got to get there in the morning. I'm pretty worried about catching a ferry, right? I might stay with relatives in Vancouver or something like that.
Dennis, I'd really appreciate you not bringing judgments into the table.
Which phrase?
Divisive. I think it's been difficult for Hornby members to bring this forward, knowing how difficult it is for Denman community. We have not done it with any divisive intent.
Excuse me.
We have just tried to honour what we've heard from our community and represent it.
That's fine. I agree with you. I also agree with my...
I'd like to say we haven't come to bring this on the table with the spirit of divisiveness, but just to represent our community.
Excuse me. I am making an observation that I think it's a divisive issue. I mean, to me, I don't think you have the right to kind of come down and quantify or qualify my statement that way. Do you not think it's a divisive issue?
I said the issue is divisive. I want to make it clear.
I'm just saying
I'm just saying we have not brought it to a table with any divisive intent.
Oh, I didn't say anything about intent.
Well,
I'm talking about reality.
Okay, let's get
forward.
on with
It's
this.
all right. It's all right. I'll end on that point.
Okay.
I apologize if I've offended you. I do not see you as being a divisive person, and I think the issue is divisive. Okay? Can you see that from my point?
Well, obviously I can hear it by the way people are speaking to it. So carry on, Donna.
All right, so I travel regularly on ferry once a week, sometimes twice a week. I've learned not to go for Tuesday morning. I have livestock. I've had kids in school. I've had to make arrangements where I go the night before. It's been a regular practice for me to come around that corner and go, I should have gone last night. So it's not a medical thing. What I see is, if I get to my Hornby Ferry, and I do, on those days that I need to catch that 8 o'clock at 6 o'clock in the morning, I would hope that there is a few of us that you wouldn't ask us to race across Denman like crazy so that we could get onto the ferry. And it happens on Cortez. They already have a system in place. So we're not reinventing the wheel. It's already there. They have a system that works for them very well. They allocate a certain number of cars. They give them a card or a something. They radio ahead and say there are 10 this morning, or there's 6 this morning, or there's none this morning, whatever the case is. And they know when there's a full load or not a full load. So then when the ferry's getting full down there, the mate knows, if I don't turn that light off now, I'm going to have too many people on the ramp. So he'll know at the end, I need to now take those 10 cars or whatever the number that's allocated. So it's not an undoable thing, it is a doable thing. And you're right, those of us that need to do it, we should be thinking ahead, and we do, but when you've got livestock to look after, or it's a regular basis, it becomes a bit more onerous, and so it doesn't feel like it's unreasonable to ask for it, and I'm okay with 10. I'm okay with 10 of us getting there at 6 o'clock in the morning for a 7:30 ferry, and having a reasonable expectation to get onto this ferry over here. There's already 2 lines. There's already a system in place coming back on, and I know that Denman people don't like it when they see the Hornby lineup fill up. There's already there coming on, so we already have a certain amount of that, and it's there, it's been in place forever. But there's one example I would like to bring forward from Hornby, and there's a young man who's diabetic, who's on dialysis on Hornby. He has to go to regular medical treatments. and he cannot stay overnight. So he has to go, and if he gets there in the morning and he sees, you know, and he tries to get there early as it is, but he gets there, if they get to Denman, he turns around and goes home because he can't get on his fare. If he can't get his first run, he can't get to his specialist appointments. And it probably happens somewhere between 4 and 6 times a year, he has to do that. So he's a very specific and unique case, but I don't think, I appreciate Laura's perspective there that it doesn't, it's not all medical, it's not all of that. It's just, if we get there early enough and we work hard at, like, cars parked there the night before, I've had my husband deliver my car down there and then I shuttle down there, you know, at 6:30 in the morning or whatever it takes so that we can get into line to try to get across. Just a few cars, that's all I'd ask for, personally. So, and I have missed it enough times, so I have a bit of an issue with the statistics because I've missed it enough times that I have to go look at the statistics and go, well, what did I do wrong that I should have gone on and I didn't?
Gentleman is filming here, I think.
Oh, Richard, are you filming?
Sorry?
Are you filming?
Yes.
Did you ask us?
I'm not making very good notes, and I read the minutes of the last meeting that's available, and they said that the minutes would be available within 2 weeks of each meeting, and that hasn't happened. So I was asked to record the proceedings at the meeting.
By whom?
By people that didn't come here today.
This meeting hasn't started yet. This is our own meeting, the official meeting hasn't started, so I'd appreciate you not recording. If you are going to record, please make a request at the beginning of the meeting.
Well,
Ferry people are
This
not.
isn't a public meeting.
Have you recorded anything so far?
everything.
I feel offended.
That
Yeah,
is
you
not
can't
okay,
do that.
Richard, it's not okay to just come in and record people.
It's the same as making notes.
This is not an official meeting yet. The meeting has not been called to order.
Well,
It's not a public meeting.
Then it's not an official recording, is it?
Well,
It's still,
I'm sorry, I would like to ask
You
you.
can't have it both ways.
no, when you record someone.
I recorded every meeting on Hornby before.
Yes, but this is not an official
And there's
meeting.
nothing,
But
there's
I
nothing
would appreciate, you know,
from the proceedings of Denman that's been reported to me that I haven't attended have been chaotic. And nobody
But no,
knows.
I won't talk about that, we're talking about today. And, you know, it would have been courtesy A to ask permission, and B, as I said, the meeting has not started yet, it's been postponed till 3:40 the BC Ferry's people come. This is just an informal discussion among the members of the
No,
committee.
it's formally, the meeting started at 2:30.
No, it hasn't been called to
It's
order.
not postponed.
Well, I have it posted and sent to me and
It
guaranteed
has
this
not been
morning.
called to order yet. The meeting starts when it's called to order.
We have a lot of business to carry on. Could you just?
Turn it off.
Well, no, I am here because I'm stuck here. I had to wait till 2 o'clock to get a ferry. I could have been here earlier.
Well, we're all stuck here. We
We're all
want to get
stuck
our
here, I know.
business done.
Well, I've got some comments. If you want to get to that, we'll get to
No,
that.
there'll be.
Turn it off, Richard.
Okay, well, as I told the other member of the public that wants to speak, there's time in the meeting, the agenda for a public presentation, it'll be a short time where you can speak. I will seek consensus of the group to maybe have that at the beginning of the meeting so you don't have to wait when the meeting starts at about 3:45 when the BC Ferry's people.
3:45?
Around that time.
They missed the ferry, so they'll wait.
They got stuck on Gabriel.
So we're all here waiting.
And I would like you to ask us.
Anyway,
I want to appreciate you asking.
Can we move on though?
Yeah, we-
Nobody has to turn it off.
Your hands off my equipment.
Turn it off, turn it off, please.
Okay, could we move on?
Actually, you're not, actually, you shouldn't
This is
be
a private
here.
meeting, get out.
You shouldn't be here until the public meeting starts.
I'm here because the public meeting started at
No, it
2:30.
hasn't started.
Like it or love it.
Richard,
You
can I
want
ask you to leave right now? Come back.
You want me to make comments or not?
Sorry?
3:30.
You want me to make comments or not?
There will be a time in the agenda for public presentations, and once the meeting has started, I'll seek consensus of the group about when we put that on the agenda. Because it is fairly a long way down the agenda, but we might want to put it higher. So we come back at 3:40, we're going to wait to accommodate you. To make a brief
The public meeting hasn't started yet, and you're not invited to this one, actually.
The other.
Well, you weren't here when it started.
No, I know.
Like-
Because I have other business to do. And there's something fell out of your camera.
Don't worry, I'll attend to it.
Yeah. No, but maybe, I think you might have to leave because this isn't public.
No, I think you'll just have to wait till 3:45. I came
You're
here.
welcome to come back at 3:40. And I'm sorry it's got delayed. It was out of my
Well,
hands.
sorry's not, doesn't cut it.
There's no BC Ferries people here yet.
Yes, there are. I just talked to two of them
Yeah,
out
they're
here.
waiting too. They're waiting too.
They're waiting too,
They're They have the waiting.
courtesy
They're waiting because they can't read their own schedule that they
No,
revised.
they've got another.
Oh, no, I already phoned BC Ferries.
Richard,
They're late because they thought there was a ferry
listen, Richard.
that
you're taking
left
up our
Buckley
time.
Bay that didn't.
Richard, you're taking up our time. Could you please leave and come back? at 3:40?
Yes, I am